I almost didn't go to my own wedding. Not because I didn't love Anna. I did, completely. But standing outside that little chapel in Portland, hands shaking, tie crooked, I had this one terrifying second where my brain said, "You could just run." I didn't run. I fixed my tie, walked through that door, and saw her standing at the end of the aisle in a simple white dress, laughing at something her sister had just whispered to her. And just like that, the fear was gone. That was 10 years ago. For most of those 10 years, loving Anna Calloway was the easiest thing in my life. She was warm in a way that didn't ask for anything in return. She remembered small things, the way I liked my coffee, the name of my college roommate's dog, the fact that I couldn't sleep if there was a light on anywhere in the room. She built a life with me the way some people build things with their hands, carefully, patiently, like every small piece mattered. We had a good home, a real one. Not perfect, but good. And then there was Leah. Leah Harper had been Anna's best friend since the 3rd grade. They grew up 3 streets apart in Portland, played on the same soccer team every fall, shared a dorm room for 2 years at college before I ever came into the picture. By the time Anna introduced us, Leah was already such a fixed part of Anna's life that meeting her didn't feel like meeting someone new. It felt like being introduced to a room you were always going to end up in eventually. She was easy to be around. That was the first thing I noticed. Not her looks, not her laugh, just how easy it was to exist in the same space as her. Some people make a room feel smaller when they walk in. Leah made it feel more settled, like someone had just turned the volume down to exactly the right level. She was at our wedding. She was in the waiting room when Anna had a health scare 2 years and that turned out to be nothing, but felt enormous at the time. She had a coffee mug in our kitchen cabinet with her name on it because she'd left it there so many times we just stopped giving it back. I want to be honest about something. For the first several years, I never thought about Leah as anything other than Anna's person. She was part of the furniture of our life together, familiar and constant and completely uncomplicated. If someone had told me back then that she would one day become the most confusing part of my existence, I would have thought they were describing the wrong man entirely. But here's the thing about slow things. You don't notice them happening. You only notice they've already happened. It was a Tuesday evening in November when everything first tilted. Anna had been in a minor car accident on the way home from work. A pickup truck ran a red light and clipped the front end of her car at a quiet intersection near a neighborhood. She was okay. Rattled, a little bruised, but okay. The doctors wanted to keep her overnight just to be safe, which meant I was sitting alone in a hospital hallway at almost midnight, too wired to sleep and too tired to think straight. I had sent my sister home an hour earlier because there was nothing for either of us to do but wait, and 2 anxious people in a hallway at midnight doesn't help anyone. So I sat alone under fluorescent lights that hummed at exactly the frequency of a headache, watching a clock on the wall move like it was doing it on purpose slowly. Then Leah walked in. She had clearly rushed over without fully preparing for it. Auburn hair loose around her shoulders, a light jacket thrown over what looked like the clothes she'd been wearing when she got the call, no bag, just her keys in one hand and a paper cup from the gas station 2 blocks down in the other. She held the cup out to me without saying anything. I took it. She sat down in the plastic chair next to mine, close enough that our shoulders touched, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. The clock kept humming. The hallway stayed empty. And then she turned and looked at me, not at the floor, not at her phone, directly at me, and asked 4 words I hadn't realized I needed to hear. "How are you doing?" Not "How is Anna?" Not "Is she okay?" Me. How was I doing? I had been asked that question 100 times in my life and answered it automatically without stopping to think. Fine. Good. You know how it is. But something about the way Leah asked it, quiet and direct and completely without an agenda, made me pause long enough to actually consider the answer. "Honestly," I said. "Yeah," she said. "Honestly, I'm really scared," I told her. She nodded like that was the most reasonable thing anyone had ever said. "I know," she replied. "Me too." We sat there for another hour. We didn't talk the whole time. We didn't need to. At some point, she went and got us both bad vending machine sandwiches, and we ate them in silence like 2 people sharing something without naming it. When the nurse finally came out to say Anna was resting comfortably and we could see her in the morning, Leah exhaled beside me like she'd been holding her breath the entire time. I drove home just before 2 in the morning feeling something I couldn't identify. Not guilt, not longing, just an awareness, like a door somewhere inside me had been left slightly open that I was almost certain I had kept closed. I told myself it was just the stress of the night. I almost believed it. Anna came home the next afternoon with a bruised collarbone, a prescription for pain medication, and a strict instruction from her doctor to rest for 4 days. She was home by 2, asleep by 3, and by 5 o'clock our apartment was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator running from the bedroom. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't finish and thought about the hospital hallway. Then I stopped thinking about it and started making soup because that felt like the more responsible thing to do. That was how I handled it for a while. Every time something surfaced, something I couldn't quite name, I replaced it with productivity. Fixed the bathroom cabinet that had been loose for 3 months. Reorganized the bookshelf. Stayed late at the office finishing reports that weren't due for another week. I was very busy doing everything except sitting still long enough to examine what was actually going on inside my head. Anna recovered quickly. Life moved forward. Leah came over for dinner about 2 weeks later, the way she always did, bringing a bottle of wine she couldn't pronounce and immediately mispronouncing it anyway, which made Anna laugh so hard she almost knocked over her glass. It was a completely normal evening, and I was completely fine, except I noticed for the first time the way Leah listened when someone was talking. Not waiting for her turn to speak, actually listening, eyes steady, fully present. I noticed the way she asked follow-up questions about things you'd mentioned 20 minutes ago, like she'd been quietly filing everything away. I noticed that when she disagreed with something, she said so directly, but without any edge to it, just a calm, clear statement of a different view. I noticed too many things. I put my glass down and excused myself to get more ice that we didn't actually need. Standing in the kitchen alone, I had a very brief, very honest conversation with myself. What I was feeling was not appropriate. It was not fair to Anna. It was not fair to Leah. It was not fair to the 10 years I had built with a woman currently sitting in the next room laughing at something Leah had said. I was going to acknowledge it privately, set it aside, and move on with my life like a functioning adult. I brought the ice back and rejoined the conversation. I was doing great. The weeks that followed had a kind of ordinary rhythm that I leaned into hard. Work was busy, which helped. Anna and I started a habit of walking together on Sunday mornings. We'd walk the long route around the park near our street, coffee in hand, talking about the week ahead or nothing important, and it felt good. Real and simple and good. But then October arrived. Anna's company sent her to a conference in Chicago for 5 days. It was the longest we'd been apart in years. The apartment had a particular kind of quiet without her in it. Not peaceful, just absent, like a sound you'd gotten so used to that you only noticed it when it stopped. On the 3rd evening, Leah texted to ask if I wanted company for dinner. She had a habit of checking in when Anna was traveling, had done it for years. It was completely normal, and I knew it was completely normal, and I said yes anyway. She brought takeout from a Thai place on Birch Street that we'd both been meaning to try. We ate at the kitchen table with the overhead light too bright and the TV on low in the background, talking about her job, a difficult conversation she'd had with her mother, a book she was halfway through and wasn't sure she liked but couldn't put down. At some point, the TV turned itself off on a timer and neither of us reached for the remote. The conversation slowed, not awkwardly. The comfortable kind of slow, where no one feels pressure to fill the silence because the silence is already full. "You seem different lately," she said. I looked up. "Different how?" She tilted her head slightly, studying me the way you study something you're trying to figure out. "Quieter, like you're thinking about something you haven't decided whether to say out loud yet." My chest did something I ignored. "Work stuff," I said. She held my gaze for a second longer than necessary. "Sure," she said. She didn't push. She never pushed. That was one of the things I had started to notice and was actively trying to stop noticing. She left around 10. I walked her to the door. She put on her jacket, picked up her bag, and paused with one hand on the doorframe. "Tell Anna I'll call her tomorrow," she said. "I will," I said. She looked at me once more, just briefly. Then she left. I closed the door, stood in the hallway for a moment, and realized my heart was beating faster than it had any reason to. Anna came home 2 days later. I picked her up from the airport, carried her bag, made her favorite dinner, and sat across from her at the table listening to her talk about the conference with my full attention. She was glowing a little, energized by the trip, happy to be home. I was happy she was home too. But somewhere underneath that, very quiet and very uninvited, something else had already taken root. I just didn't know yet how deep it had already grown. Anna found out on a Friday night, and it wasn't dramatic the way you'd expect. There was no screaming at first, no thrown objects, no door slamming hard enough to rattle the windows. She just stood in the kitchen holding my phone, reading something on the screen, and when she looked up at me, her face had gone completely still. That stillness was worse than anything loud could have been. It was the kind of expression that only appears when someone's mind is working very fast to process something their heart already understands. "What is this?" she asked. Her voice was calm, controlled, like she was holding something fragile and didn't want to drop it. I looked at the screen. It was a message from Leah. 6 words. "We need distance. For her sake." I had sent it 2 days earlier after a conversation that scared me, a moment outside my office building where Leah and I had stood too close together in the cold for too long, said too little, and both understood too much. "It's not what it looks like," I said. Even as I said it, I knew how that sounded. Anna set the phone down on the counter very carefully, like placing something breakable on a glass shelf. She pulled out a chair and sat down at the kitchen table. She folded her hands in front of her. She looked at the middle of the table for a long moment. Then she looked at me. "Sit down, James." "You said, tell me the truth," she said. "All of it." Right now, I had rehearsed a version of this conversation in my head a dozen times. In every version, I had the right words ready, measured and honest and careful. But sitting across from Anna in that kitchen, under that overhead light, with her looking at me the way she was, every prepared word dissolved. So I just told her. Not everything, but enough. I told her that something had been building without my permission, that I had tried to manage it, that Leah had been the one to draw the line before anything happened. I told her that nothing physical had occurred. I told her that I was sorry in a way that came from somewhere real. And I listened to all of it without interrupting once. When I finished, the kitchen was so quiet I could hear the faint sound of traffic from the street outside. A car passed, then another. The refrigerator hummed. "Did you want it to?" she asked. Did I want what to? Did you want something to happen with her? That was the question I had been avoiding asking myself for months. Sitting there with no rehearsed answer and no comfortable exit, I finally had to look directly at it. "I don't know," I said. "I think I wanted to feel something." And she made me feel it. Anna absorbed that slowly. Like a piece of information she was turning over carefully before deciding where to put it. "You could have talked to me," she said. "I know. Why didn't you?" I didn't have a clean answer. The real answer was complicated and unflattering. I had assumed she wouldn't understand. I had been too proud to admit I was struggling. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped treating her like someone I could be honest with and started treating her like someone I needed to perform okayness for. "I thought I could handle it on my own," I said. "How did that work out?" she asked. Not sarcastically, just plainly. I didn't answer. She stood up from the table and walked to the window. She stood there looking out at the street for a while, arms crossed loosely, not in anger, but in the way of someone who needs something to hold on to. "I need you to sleep in the other room tonight," she said without turning around. "Okay," I said. "And tomorrow I need you to call someone. A counselor. Not for us yet. For you." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "James." "Yeah. I'm not done with this marriage," she said. "But I need to think. And I can't think clearly when you're in the same room right now." She walked past me down the hallway. The bedroom door closed. Not slammed. Closed. I sat at that kitchen table alone for almost an hour. Leah called the next morning. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail that I listened to 3 times. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the strain underneath it, the particular tension of someone trying very hard to say a difficult thing simply. She said she had heard from a mutual friend that Anna knew. She said she was sorry. She said she wasn't calling to explain herself or to make things worse. She was calling because she needed me to know one thing clearly. "You have something worth saving," she said. "Don't waste this." Then the voicemail ended. I put the phone face down on the bed in the guest room and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Outside, the neighborhood was going about its Saturday the way neighborhoods do, completely unbothered by the fact that my life was sitting in several pieces around me. I thought about Anna, standing at that window with her arms crossed. I thought about 10 years of small, careful things she had done without being asked, the coffee, the walks, the way she always made sure I had eaten when I was stressed and forgot to feed myself. I thought about how long I had taken all of that for granted by pretending it was simply how things were instead of a choice she made every single day. Then I picked up my phone and called a counselor. It was the first right decision I had made in months. The guest room had a squeaky floorboard just inside the door, and after 2 weeks of sleeping in there, I knew exactly which part of my foot to shift my weight onto to avoid waking Anna when I got up early. That's what my life had become, learning how to move quietly through my own home. I want to be honest about those first few weeks because it would be easy to skip past them and get to the part where things got better. But the in-between part matters. It was hard in ways I hadn't anticipated. Not explosive hard, grinding hard. The kind of hard that doesn't announce itself loudly, but just sits on your chest from the moment you open your eyes. Anna and I were polite to each other. That was almost worse than fighting would have been. We said good morning. We asked about each other's days. We passed each other in the hallway with careful, neutral expressions like two colleagues sharing an office after a disagreement neither had fully processed. Politeness, I learned, can be its own kind of distance. I had started seeing a counselor named Dr. Carlos, a quiet man with reading glasses he was always taking on and off, and a habit of letting silences run longer than felt comfortable. He didn't tell me what to think. He just asked questions and then waited, unhurried, while I dug around for the actual answer underneath the first answer I gave. In our second session, he asked me when I had last told Anna something true about how I was feeling, not logistics, not updates, something emotionally true. I tried to remember. I couldn't. How long ago do you think it was? He asked. A while. I said. How long is a while? I looked at the window. Maybe years. He nodded, took his glasses off, set them on his knee. That's worth sitting with, he said. I sat with it for the rest of the week. Anna had agreed to couples counseling, but said she needed a few more weeks before she was ready. I respected that and didn't push. What I did instead was try something smaller and more immediate. I started showing up differently in the little moments, the ones that don't seem to count, but actually count the most. I started making coffee before she woke up and leaving on the counter the way she liked it, with just enough room for her to add the rest. Not as a grand gesture, just as a small, true one. I stopped filling every quiet evening with my phone and started actually being in the room. When she talked about her day, I put down whatever I was holding and listened fully without waiting for my turn. Anna noticed. She didn't say anything right away, but she noticed. I could tell by the way the careful politeness between us started softening at the edges, not dramatically, just slightly, the way ice doesn't melt all at once. 3 weeks in, she knocked on the guest room door late on a Thursday evening. I was still awake, reading a book I wasn't really absorbing. There's leftover pasta if you want some, she said. It was a small thing, the smallest thing, but Anna didn't have to knock on that door. She could have gone to bed without saying a word. The fact that she knocked meant something, and we both understood that without either of us saying it. Yeah, I said, I'd like that. We sat at the kitchen table and ate reheated pasta at 11 o'clock at night, and the conversation started slow and careful, and then, somewhere around the second bowl, became something easier. She told me about a disagreement she'd had with a coworker that had been bothering her all week. I told her about a mistake I'd made on a project that I'd been too embarrassed to mention. Small admissions. Unpolished ones. The kind you only make when you're starting to trust someone again. We started couples counseling the following Monday. Dr. Webb had an office with 2 cream-colored chairs angled toward each other and a single plant in the corner that looked like it had survived considerable neglect and was stronger for it. I thought about that plant often during the harder sessions. The work was not comfortable. We talked about patterns that had been forming for years, ways we had each gone quiet when we should have spoken up, assumptions we had let harden into fact, the slow drift that neither of us had named out loud, because naming it would have meant admitting something was wrong. Anna said in one session that she had felt invisible to me for a long time. Not unloved. Invisible. Like she had become part of the background of my life rather than the center of it. That one stayed with me for days. Because she was right, and I had no defense against something true. Progress came unevenly and without fanfare. Some weeks felt like genuine movement. Others felt like standing still. But we kept showing up, both of us, which turned out to matter more than any single breakthrough. Leah moved to Denver in the spring. Anna and I were having dinner at home the evening Leah's moving truck left Portland, and I think we both knew it without mentioning it. There was a moment near the end of the meal where Anna looked at me across the table with an expression I couldn't fully read. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not leaving when it would have been easier." I reached across the table and took her hand. We sat like that for a long time, the food going cold, the evening going dark outside the window, neither of us moving, neither of us needing to. Loving Anna had always been easy. What I know now is that easy was never the point. The point was choosing it. Loudly, deliberately, every single day, especially on the days it asked something from me. I almost let fear make that choice for me. I'm glad I didn't.